We've been going through a little series called Stories from John, I gather. Is that there? And we've got just two left. So, and with it being Holy Week, we've done the kind of Palm Sunday. So you think kind of, what person could we talk about during Holy Week? And we're going to talk about Judas. Now, you might think, kind of, there's lots of pleasant characters to talk about, kind of in the lead up to Easter. Why do we want to spend an afternoon talking about Judas? I mean, if it was in a pantomime, if Judas was to come on, it would be the kind of boo hiss, he's behind you kind of, he would be the baddie kind of person. So, but we want to give a little thought about Judas, what Judas did in that week, actually what Judas did in maybe the years leading up to that week, and maybe some lessons that we could learn for ourselves, so that we don't fall into the same kind of trap as Judas did. So I'm not quite sure if you're here as a guest, I'm not sure if you know how much of the Bible story, but Judas was one of the people that Jesus chose to be one of his closest followers. So we read in Luke chapter 9 that Jesus called 12 people together, and he gave them power and authority to drive out demons, to cure diseases, and he sent them out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. So Judas was one of those 12 people, that Jesus had chosen. He'd spent time with Jesus, he'd seen Jesus' miracles, he'd heard the teaching, maybe he'd seen Jesus walking on the water, maybe he'd seen the feed 5,000. Actually, he'd seen all kinds of stuff going on. And here, the disciples are sent out 2 by 2, and Judas is one of the people who, following Jesus, had seen God in human form, and he goes out on a little mission. We're not quite sure who gets paired up with Judas, but there he is. Actually, he seems to be somebody who is doing the Christian life. I'm sure when they came back and they all said, yeah, we saw people being healed, and we saw kind of demons kind of coming out of people. We saw all this kind of stuff. I'm sure Judas would have been one of the ones that they didn't come back and 10 of them said, oh yeah, we saw this stuff, and Judas and his mate said, oh, we didn't do anything. I'm sure Judas saw it as well. Judas was somebody who, though something was in his life. I mean, we could come in along to brunch here on a Sunday afternoon, and people could look at you and think, actually, yeah, here's somebody, and it looks as though their Christian life is doing well on the outside. They're doing the Christian stuff, like Judas here was on the outside was doing the Christian stuff, but there was something going on the inside that wasn't super helpful. Actually, for all of us, you can look on the outside and think people seem to be doing okay. They seem to be very polite and spiritual and whatever. But actually, for each one of us, at times there's things going on the inside. Actually, things going on the inside that maybe you know about, God knows about, but maybe people don't know about. Here's what happened to Judas. So there was a time when this woman bought this very expensive perfume and broke it and poured it over Jesus' feet. And it was the most amazing thing. And Jesus said, this kind of story is to be told wherever the good news is preached. But Judas was one of the ones who complained. He says this, but Judas, one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. Actually, so here's this perfume. Actually, a year's wages. Now, I'm not sure how much you earn in a year. But actually, it was probably worth thousands of pounds. And just in that one moment, she breaks this perfume over Jesus' feet and does this amazing thing, a very costly thing. And Judas complains. He says, well, actually, and he sounds, on the outside, he sounds very Christian. Actually, this has been gone in a few moments. Actually, we could have sold that, and with thousands of pounds, actually, we could have fed lots of poor people. And it might have sounded really Christian, but actually, do you know what they said to him? He didn't say it's because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As a keeper of the money bag, he kept, that he used to help himself to what was put in it. Now, I'm not sure if you get your head around that. Here's Judas, and he sees God. He sees Jesus. Here is God in human form. He sees Jesus, and he's doing these most amazing miracles. He sees the compassion, the humility, and the justice in this man. He kind of sees all this stuff, and yet he keeps the purse that feeds everybody when they go on their little mission trips, and he used to steal money from the purse. I mean, why would you want to do? You've got Jesus in front of you. I mean, God's there, and yet somehow there was something about him that I want money. Well, Judas, what are you going to do with money? I mean, you've got God here. But you know what? Our hearts are sometimes really funny on the insides. Actually, the fact you could know God, that you personally could find him, you could know his forgiveness and his hope and his peace. You might think, of course I'm going to just live for that the whole of my life. But actually, if we're honest, the truth is that sometimes there's things on the inside that appeal to us. Actually, sometimes the things on the inside that seem to be actually a little bit more important than God, a bit more important than Jesus. Actually, there's things that go on the inside. And for Judas, it was it was money. He loved money. In fact, he loved money more than he loved God. It seems to be the case. Jesus says, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve money and serve God, because one of them's going to win. As we come to Holy Week, which one wins for Judas? Here's 30 pieces of silver. Here's Jesus. Jesus, 30 pieces of silver. What's Jesus saying? He says this, then one of the 12, one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, what are you going to give me if I deliver him over to you? I can see an opportunity here to make a bit of cash. So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him, that's Jesus, over to them. I'm not sure what you think about Judas, but actually, such a sad thing to happen. Such a sad thing to happen for somebody who had the opportunity to know and encounter God, that something else got in the way. And he goes ahead, and there he is, and he's at the table, and he goes out and leaves the Last Supper, and he goes and finds, and eventually he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's there, and he goes up to Jesus and kisses him, and that's the sign that this is the person, and Jesus is arrested, and he's taken away, and Judas has the cash in his pocket, but he sees Jesus being taken away, and all of a sudden he comes to a realization, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? I don't know if ever you come to that kind of situation where you've done something and you think, oh no, what have I done? I kind of look on the outside like I'm a reasonable Christian. I look on the outside as if I'm trying to do the God thing, but I know there's some stuff on the inside, and if I let that take control, oh no, what have I done? When Judas, it says here, when Judas, who betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. I have sinned, he said. I've betrayed innocent blood. What's that, Doris? That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. And then he went away and hanged himself. Tim, I've come to church to be cheered up. Come on, this is a bit heavy. Come on, what's going on? It's a sad story, isn't it? I mean, for some people think, well, did Judas have a choice? And actually, I personally think that Judas did have a choice. I think he did have a choice of whether he lived truthfully on the inside or whether he gave in to the love of money. I think there's times where people make human choices, and maybe on the back of human choices, God does come and do something. I mean, Pharaoh in the Old Testament kind of was somebody who God used. And if you read the story, it says that kind of Pharaoh hardened his heart, Exodus 8:15. Pharaoh hardened his heart, Exodus 8:32. Pharaoh hardened his heart, Exodus 9:34. Pharaoh did this. And so eventually God said, well, okay, if you're going to go that way, Pharaoh, let me push you to the end. And so it then says, and then the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And actually, I'm wondering if it's the same with Judas. Was Judas prophesied to always be the one that was going to betray Jesus? Well, I think Judas gave into money. And even just at that last moment when Jesus gives him the bread himself, and Judas knows he takes it, that he's still going to betray him. And I think even up to that moment, he's got the choice. And at that point, it says they left, and Satan entered him, and he went ahead and went to do the most atrocious thing. So what do we learn? Okay, here's 3 little quick things I'd say. I would ask each one of us, are we living a lie? That's the question Judas should have asked himself. Am I living a lie? Actually, outwardly, he is a good disciple. He's going along with it, he's preaching the kingdom of heaven, he's healing the sick. But secretly, he's stealing money. And he lives a lie. Even right up to the last moment. I mean, even up to the last moment, kind of, as they're around there at the Last Supper, after Jesus said to them, Jesus was troubled in spirit, truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. His disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which of them he meant. I mean, it's not as though someone's going to betray me and all eyes turned Judas. Actually, somehow he managed to keep up the front. He managed to keep on looking like a good Christian, a good disciple, because even at the moment where he was going to betray him, actually he didn't have a clue what was going on inside. Now, that's a super shocking thing, isn't it? That actually, I might not have a clue what's going on in your thoughts at the moment. I don't know what's going on in the secret things of your heart. I don't know if times if we give in to the lie that something else is more important than God, something else is more attractive than God, something else could take the place of his forgiveness and his love and his hope. But you know what? People do. People secretly give in to all kinds of things. There's the kind of money, sex, and power. I suppose are 3 things that people say. Actually, look at the secret life, and is there something about you that you just love money, like Judas? Actually, you just like a bit more money. Actually, you think if I had more money, I'd be happier. If I had more money, that life would be easier. And somehow you start to worship money. For some people, sex and relationships somehow becomes just super important in their lives. And again, slightly distorted sometimes, the places people go on the internet and things that they see. And there's a magnetic draw to things that aren't helpful. And there's like an inner life that is there, that's being a secret life that's being fed, or power. The power is not the power to be the president or the prime minister, but actually we want to have power over situations, power over people, and controlling and manipulation, and getting our own way, and being selfish and self-centered, and all that. And there's like a draw for power. Actually, these things are secret things that are trying to eat away at our lives. And somehow we can give an appearance that we're doing just fine. But on the inside, I suppose the question is, are you living a lie? There's a great little book, I'm not sure if you've read it, by John Mark Comer, and it's called Live No Lies. Actually, it's talking about how, rather than money, sex and power, he talks about the world, the flesh and the devil. And actually these are trying to gnaw away the secret part of you, the inside part of you. And John Mark Comer's book says about how you can resist the powers of the world and society and expectations. Actually, you can resist those fleshly human drives and desires that maybe you keep secret but seem so powerful, and you can resist the powers of darkness and the devil. I think there's something about realising that there's an enemy that wants to keep things secret, actually that wants to keep you bound, actually that wants to draw you away from knowing the love and the hope and the truth that only Jesus can bring you. Judas was tempted away by money. Can't understand it. But actually, time and time again, I look at my own life, or maybe you look, and you say, well, sometimes I look at it, what have I done? What have I thought? I just can't understand in the light of Jesus, why did I choose that? And we realise that if we're going to live the best kind of life that Jesus always intended us to live, actually we've got to be genuine and honest and real with what's happening in our secret life. In our thoughts, in our emotions, when no one else is watching. What's going on there? Are you making space for money, sex, power, for the world, flesh and devil? Judas did. And for him, it ended badly. So, I suppose, what is the remedy? Actually, how can you avoid being like Judas? If we're going to learn from his mistakes, what would we do? And I suppose a remedy for that negative secret history is bringing things into the open. Actually, confession, accountability, and cultivating a positive spiritual history are probably three things that I would say. Confession is just admitting. Actually, in the end, he does admit his fault. Now, I question it. Do you think Judas is going to be in heaven? I don't know. I mean, it's just an interesting thing. Actually, in the end, he did say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. He committed suicide because, that's the unforgivable sin. Actually, it's interesting, even when you look at the book of Acts, and they talk about Judas, they go, Judas, boo hiss, he's in the place where he belongs, and even those first followers might have thought that he was, but actually, the Jesus that I know, the God that I know, actually, confession is a doorway to forgiveness. If you confess your sins, God is faithful and just. He will forgive you. Actually, whatever private secret stuff you've got back to, whatever it is that you've looked at the internet this week, whatever it is that those secret drivers, actually, if you confess, if you just put your hand up and own it, I did that, I thought that, I said that. Do you know what? God is faithful and just. He can forgive you. He can strengthen you. He can help you on the inside. Actually, sometimes it's confessing that to God. Actually, sometimes it's slightly awkward, but actually it's good to confess things to other people because it can have a little secret power of its own. Things live in the darkness and thrive in the darkness, and when you just happen to say to somebody, do you know what, at the moment I'm really struggling with anger, I'm really struggling with visiting inappropriate sites on the internet, or I'm really finding that I'm thinking more about money than I should be thinking about. Or there's this person and I'm really struggling to know how to forgive them. And the things those things on the inside that could take the place of God, actually even vocalising that, saying that out to a trusted friend, might be a space to find a remedy, to find freedom. Actually, accountability. If you know that there's an issue, like Judas, if he didn't know that money was an issue, actually, if he'd have told somebody and said, will you hold me accountable? Will you ask me at the end of each week, have you picked anything out of the money bag? And again, if he wanted to be serious, if he knew it was an issue, like a little addiction to money, actually, if I want to break that addiction, somehow accountability is really helpful. I know for myself, I've met with a friend called Pete, and I'll say to Pete, I want to follow Jesus wholeheartedly. I just know there's a few things that could be a problem to me. Pete, every time we meet, will you ask me these three questions? And I give him three questions that I know are three things that I need to work out in my own personal history. And accountability, I think, is one of those things. Maybe to find a trusted person, a prayer partner, somebody that you meet up with, and just, if you know there's something you have a struggle with, those internal dark things that could control your life, like with Judas, how am I going to stop that? Why not be accountable to somebody? Each time you meet to pray together, say, will you ask me these three questions? Will you ask me how I'm getting on with this particular person, or my own love of money, or my sexual purity, or for longing for power, or whatever it is that you think is a deal for you. And just the last thing, are you cultivating a positive spiritual history? You can't serve God and money. Actually, as you serve God and serve God and serve God, actually the love of money should decline. Actually, that if you pursue God, you can resist the devil, he'll flee from you. Actually, there's something about pursuing a positive spiritual secret history. A secret history of where you choose to pray. A secret history where you choose to read the Bible. A secret history where you choose to fast or to give. Things where people don't notice. Actually, what is you're saying to God, God, I'm depending on you. I'm not depending on what people think about me. I'm not depending on what I can get out of the situation. God, I am depending on you. And maybe, just maybe, if Judas had listened to those kind of messages, Judas had been able to confess, to be accountable, had developed his own personal history, maybe for him, things would have been different. Jesus, of course, would have still gone to the cross. He would still have died there for all wrongdoings. He would still have made kind of conquered death like we celebrate next Sunday, Easter Sunday. But maybe Judas would have had a different pathway. And maybe for us, this afternoon, actually we've got the choice of a different pathway. Is there something that people look on the outside and say, you look as though you're doing okay, but on the inside you know you're not. On the inside you know there's some things that at the moment you're struggling with, you're wrestling with. Don't you